So Joel, welcome to CTO Confessions. It's great to have you on board, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What are you doing? Who do you work for?
Well, my name is Joel Krooswyk. I am currently the federal CTO at GitLab. And what that means is I live where policy meets technology. And it's just an interesting space to be in.
Wow, we'll explore that in a little bit more. So what's your journey been like to where you are now? What's that been like?
It's kind of fascinating. I've been all over technology. So everything from starting out in hardware and in networking, working, I guess in the early days, I spent a lot of time on that, thinking that was going to be my career. And it turned out, well, software took over, right? So I had to get into the software world and I've never left. So somewhere out there, you'll find almost 500,000 lines of code with my name on them. Maybe not these days, I guess. That code may or may not still be around. But then that led me into product management, and product management led me into technical sales, and technical sales led me into the process of actually going up and through becoming a subject matter expert in the technologies I was representing, which led me to this CTO title. So it's been really an interesting journey, going from just a starting point in the software world through all the methodologies, the end-to-end, the design, the agile processes, all these pieces came together that allowed me to become this kind of subject matter expert out here.
Wow. You mentioned something there a second ago around, bits of code that might still be out. Yeah, I can imagine the number of lines of code out there. But I mean, how do you feel? Because it kind of triggered me, because I come from a hardware background and designing. And a lot of this stuff, because the movement of software and the development and progression and evolution is just vicious, a lot of this stuff just ends up at the wayside. And you spent all that time, all that blood, sweat and tears creating this stuff, and it becomes, it just lost the time.
Oh, goodness. Yes. The amount of time I've created what we know as shelfware, right? It's sitting in a closet someplace. It never really saw the light of day.
Right.
For a while, that was almost depressing in my career. The amount of code I would write that would not make it to a production environment. On the other side of that, I mean, since we are on the Confessions podcast here, I've actually written a fair amount of open source code that I put out there for our customer base over the years.
Wow.
And not here at GitLab, for the record. But over the years, I've put that code out there. It's still out there. And now that we're entering this era of AI, it learned from a lot of open source code. So if your code is wildly inefficient and kind of buggy, I apologize. That's probably me. I haven't maintained that for a decade.
Right. That's interesting, actually. And kudos to you. I love the idea of democratizing tech, sharing, and not having people to reinvent the wheel. So, for people that actually offer this stuff into the ecosystem of open source is absolutely brilliant. And and so coming now to the company that you are working on. So I know what that company is about. But share to your audience. Hopefully, most of our audience will know that as well. But what's the problem that GitLab are kind of solving in the market?
Well, it is an end-to-end software development platform. So the whole idea of coming to one place with an idea and being able to develop it, secure it, and move it to a production environment is what we've made our aim. And so it's interesting. I was around in 2017. There were only 150 of us back then, and it was like a DevOps platform. The whole idea of source code and the automation of CI/CD pipeline coming together, that was kind of revolutionary at the time. Well, fast forward 8 years. There's 2,500 people working on this thing now instead of 150, and it is now the DevSecOps platform. And it is AI powered, right? So we put AI in there as well. So it's this whole development world from start to finish, everything from the idea in your head until it hits to the production environment.
Wow. Yeah, it's great. I'm really curious as to how that AI how it's been inserted and how it's helping the process of writing code.
We're in a crazy time of evolution, and it's not a slow evolution by any stretch of the imagination, is it? AI has been applied at different areas throughout that software development lifecycle. So if you think about it from the perspective of code creation, I mean, that's where our minds go, right? We create a whole bunch of new code, but if we create a bunch of new code and don't have AI elsewhere in the process, we just end up with a pile of new code. So having it applied across the entire process has been something that's been a focus. So there's, if I look at GitLab today, there's at least 25 different features with AI, everything from summarizing your work items to being a code reviewer for you, or automatically fixing security vulnerabilities for you, or creating and executing your tests for you. AI is doing a lot more. Oh, there's one in there, root cause analysis. If something goes wrong, I've spent years equivalent of my life trying to debug code, and now I can push a button and get an answer in 2 to 3 minutes. I mean, come on, right? This is great stuff.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I just talked this summer, actually just a few weeks ago, at Amazon Web Services conference. And I was talking about the transition we're in. So right now, it's all these assistants for AI, right? We push the button, we get an answer. We're moving into agentic AI. Everybody's talking about the agents, right? And MCP servers and all these things. What it means is the context is growing, the capabilities are growing. What it can do for us is dramatically larger, and it's becoming a little bit more independent. I don't have to poke it for every little thing. I can tell it what I want, and it does it for me. That shift is changing what the software development lifecycle is going to look like. The whole workflow is about to change. And I think we're standing right on the precipice. We're looking out at this change right now. So a year from now, if you and I sat down again to talk, I can't imagine what a development workflow looks like in an AI-led or AI-native environment. It's going to be wildly different.
It is. So just a little bit of a confession from me about my history. I worked in AI when I did my electronics degree, so in the early days, and I actually left it because I couldn't. It was too much of a stick your finger in the air and see which way the wind's blowing and try something. It wasn't really. But I am shocked at how sophisticated and how enabling it is for lots of different areas. It's mind blowing, isn't it? Really, and it seems to just keep pulling rabbits out of the hat. It's going, hey, here's another one, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's improved dramatically. If you just go back 2 years even and look at the output, right, just from a quality perspective, not even all the quantity and capability perspective, but just the quality. If AI was giving me a suggestion for code creation, I might accept that less than 10% of the time a couple of years ago. Now, 4 out of 5 times will be, yeah, okay, I think that looks pretty good for me, right? For what I'm trying to do, this will get me going. And so even that shift alone is where we're starting to see those massive productivity gains that they were not on our radar a couple of years ago.
And something else you mentioned a second ago, which kind of, I guess it's a like mini career trauma, that kind of popped up, which is around code reviews. Because I remember that I absolutely think code reviews are important to get somebody else to cast their eyes and they spot something that, and just the kind of curiosity as well, how does that work? And there's this cross-pollination of what you're working on. They kind of know it as well. But it sometimes was quite a traumatic experience because somebody's looking at your baby and then depending on how it was worded, criticizing it, you're thinking, come on, I love this idea of AI agent or AI being used to, review your code and give you those kind of pointers, because it's a really tight feedback loop in terms of learning and growth as well, not just delivering quality code, but learning.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating too how it's gone from being a review mechanism to an active participant just in the last several months. It's become your peer programmer. It's become your fellow code reviewer. It's become a member of the team. And cringy saying it that way, but it's true, right? And so here we are watching it come back to us and say, I think I would do this differently. And the thing I love about this, this is where AI really pays off in my mind. This is where it opens the door to the box that I'm stuck in, right? I think of things a certain way and it says, well, I've seen other code. I've seen it done this way. Why wouldn't you do that? Oh, I never would have thought of that. That's why. So I think it's going to help us from that perspective, right? It opens the door to creativity in ways that we just don't naturally think of.
Yeah, it's I love the idea of I mean I use a version of AI like many people do just to bounce ideas. It's like a friend in the pocket that you can ask a question but they've read loads of books and they know loads of stuff and allow you to kind of direct your curiosity in directions, which fascinating. So yeah, from a coding perspective, I being a coder in the past, I would love to know how this feels now. And I guess there's a kind of productivity side, but it's also the quality. I mean, does this stuff bring about? Does it enable? It's an obvious question, but does it enable innovation?
It does. I think what's interesting is we often think about this just from the new code perspective, right? We're going to have more code, and it's going to allow us to be more innovative. It's going to allow us to be more creative. It's going to allow us to have a better user experience. I think all those things are real. But if we look at where our problems are in software development today, a lot of it is in the existing code that we have, right? That's what's being attacked. That's what's this giant application we've been building for 20 years, and we can't just create new code for it necessarily. So what's interesting is I think near term, the biggest benefit of AI is actually in the refactoring capabilities of moving us forward from old Java frameworks to new ones, or creating things in a new language that's more efficient. It allows us to scale better, or gets rid of a memory safety issue for real. And we actually can offload that giant technical backlog we've been maintaining forever and start to level set it with new languages. Those kind of things are the near-term benefits in my mind that are going to be far more well received in the enterprise space. Whereas a lot of the startups, 95% of their code already is AI based or AI led. We know that, right? That's been disclosed. So I think we're going to see that break for a while. And then once things are brought up and leveled up across the enterprise, maybe we can all start looking at new AI code together.
Yes, yeah, fascinating. So exciting space that you're in, and it's a tool that many of us developers know about. So it's great to hear somebody that's kind of in that ecosystem and developing that side of it. So your leadership, okay, I want to put the spotlight on you and your leadership and what have you. So what are the stories that you'd like to share around your leadership are kind of quite striking and would be really useful for our audience to kind of learn from?
Wow, there's a lot there. I think, let's start with something that really bothers me on a regular basis. And I'll just say this in kind of a crude way. We suck at cybersecurity. Can I just put that out there?
Yeah.
We continue to see headlines day after day after day saying that we're just not getting it right. We're constantly leaking data. The most recent one, whether it's true or not, looks like there's some question marks, but we've had something like 16 billion passwords leaked this year. And the numbers are crazy, right? For how many different avenues have been taken to access my data over the years. And currently, as of this day right now, my ATMs at my bank have been down for 2 weeks. My insurance company's been down for 3 weeks. I can't edit my policy and it's up for renewal.
Wow.
It's becoming one of those things that if we're going to move to a digital-based economy here, then the ability for these systems to stay up and the ability for us to be cyber secure has to be on par with my ability to turn on the faucet and get water, or to plug in my light and have it work because the electric is up. And we haven't seen it that way, right? So now all of a sudden, this is kind of a core utility in our lives that we have to do better on. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that irks me being in this leadership role, is looking around and saying, wow, we keep talking about doing better, and yet things don't seem to be getting much better.
Yes.
So I think that's probably the number one thing that's on my mind.
Yeah. It reminds me of companies that there's a company actually just up the road from us in the UK, which it'd been around it was called the Old Knights of something. It's a logistics company, and they went bust because they were attacked, and then there was a ransom kind of applied, and they couldn't bring their systems back up. So I imagine that the business was running on a tight budget, and that was just enough to send it over the edge. So, people lost their jobs. A business that had been around for many, many years, quite a very respected business as well. So,
Right.
so what, Joel? What's the thing that we need to do in the space? I'm going to put you on a soapbox, okay? And you're going to give it some, right? What do you want to say to the space?
I think what we've got to do is move past the conversation and move toward the standardization, right? We all know what needs to be done, but we're not doing it. We all know kind of what needs to be done across the board, but we're doing the minimally viable subset just to get ourselves out there. And so from the perspective of regulation, for instance, again, I'm playing in the government space a lot. So I watch all the regulations that come out, and I watch them globally, everything from, Cyber and AI Act in the EU to what the US government's doing right now around AI and the cybersecurity executive orders. There's tons of different stuff out there. But what I keep seeing is a rise and fall. We're talking about the same things that we talked about 10 years ago in policy. What hasn't changed is the commitment outside of a self-attestation of what you're doing to secure your software. That isn't really much, right? I can tell you what I'm doing. It doesn't mean I'm doing it very well. And so I think we have to move past the, I'm doing it thing into a show me, right? Let's become the show me industry. Prove it. Be more transparent. Get out there. Say what you're doing to secure your software. Let's talk about our failures publicly and how we remedied them, and share that information out so that we can all up level as an industry, instead of just trying to build off one another's failures. I think there's something that we've reached a point in time where it's become important to look at things that way and to start really showing the evidence behind how we're doing it right, so that other people have that and can follow.
Yeah. It makes me think of it's great that we live in a world now where there's a democratization of technology where, I can write an app and I can stick up on the web, on a website, and I can provide data, and I can say that I'm ticking all the boxes. It's great that we can do that. There's this kind of innovation, and it's almost on fire, it's like a firestorm of innovation. And the problem is that that ability to create what I want to create is great, but it's also a downside, because any Tom, Dick, or Harry can kind of create a site and then start collecting this information and not storing it properly. So what's the simple steps that we get? Is it government policy? Is it laws? Is it standards?
To some extent, I believe it is. And to some extent, I kind of stop right at that level, right? And I think part of this is going to become even more evident to us as to what that need's going to be in the years ahead, because AI is unlocking that ability for me as an individual contributor. I don't even have to know code to create and release that app, right? AI does it for me. I actually did this the other day. I went and played with it and said, hey, I want to build an app that does this. I didn't even tell it what language. It developed it in a language I don't know, right? It wrote this app in Go, which I just don't know. I'm like, well, what do I do with this if I have to fix it, or if it's not secure, or, we just push it out and hope for the best. Well, if it's accessing any critical information, I think we have to have something around that says, look, this has to go through a certain process. We can't just put it out there and expect it to be used. One example of that, of course, being when we get new AI applications published. What's the connectivity, right? We all rush in and go, oh, wow, that's a great new model. That's a great new setup. It's something like DeepSeek comes out. Well, nobody checked to see if it's phoning home. What's it doing with my data? Is it sharing it with everybody? What's happening? And foolishly, everyone rushes in to use something new, but doesn't necessarily verify. So there's ownership on both sides, right? If this is going to be something that can access critical information, there's probably some regulation requirements on it. Otherwise, there's also some onus on your end to make sure that you're not just grabbing something and using it without doing due diligence. And so for me, the middle of all that kind of looks like the label on the back of your food. Like,
Yes.
can I get an SBOM? If I can't get an SBOM, can I get some sort of open source disclosure, vulnerability disclosure? What scanners did you run against the software? Tell me something about how you made this app in a way that I can at least put some trust in it. And I think there's something there that is at least some middle ground for us to start on.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's a great analogy, actually. You have the tin, says what it says it's going to do, but also what's in it. Okay, and yeah, I love that. So hopefully that will kind of come about, and we'll be able to start to kind of tie up some of these systems. It reminds me of a previous conversation I had around, even writing code, of how people are able, what they call it, the attack vectors. So even code is being entered into open source code, which then creates backdoors to allow people in. So people contributing their code, is the coders have become an attack vector. So
Yeah,
they'll inadvertently, not realizing it, they had some code checked in under their name, which is actually a vulnerability that's been seeded into the system. I mean, is that something that you deal with much in your space? Is it something that gets addressed?
It is. It's something we run into a lot, and not so much from a code creation on our side perspective, but helping other people create their code, right? We're the platform people use to create code. And so one of the questions that gets asked frequently is, well, how do I know if the code that we just downloaded was the right thing? There's 10 different repositories that do the same thing.
Yeah.
9 are malicious. 1 is legitimate. Which one is it?
Yeah.
And so understanding what dependency management is, I mean, it's one of the reasons I'm a fan of the software bill of materials, or the SBOM. Like that concept helps me root that out and understand where the vulnerabilities lie and where the contributors were putting code in from, and is it from a nation state actor or something like that? Is there something that's potentially malicious in here? That's a huge concern for everybody that's building software in the enterprise and government space right now. And so that's something we watch very, very closely. The OpenSSF scorecard, another thing I'm a huge fan of, that actually puts like a trust or risk score on an open source repository.
Wow.
Very, very interesting. It's a quick way to find out, is this even being maintained, what I'm looking at grabbing, and does it have a risk score associated with it that's good enough for me to consider grabbing it?
Yeah.
That puts it in 1 out of 10 repositories right now, approximately. That trustworthiness, that risk, that
Yes.
makes sure that it's usable.
Yeah, I like that. I love that idea of having a fuzzy feeling around something. So is it something that I want to do? It reminds me of the olden days. You remember when we used to have the first early days of the internet, where we'd be able to download applications and free software, and we'd be throwing it onto our PCs like it was like it was the last day. And you're just thinking, I mean, that was madness. We were opening ourselves up to all kinds of stuff. And then, of course, it's only going to be about a time for somebody cottons on going, oh my God, people are downloading stuff just like crazy. Let's put something in there that benefits us, Yeah.
Yeah. And when we're in a hurry, right, we're under pressure, get it out,
Yeah.
get it done, let's move on. And what makes it more interesting now is we lean on AI to pull things in for us. Where's it getting the code? Is it getting the right code? We still have to validate it. AI is testing a lot of its own code. We have got to be in that loop. We've got to bring some sanity to that and say, like, okay, you pulled that from the wrong place, or you coded that based on the wrong information that's out there. Let's make sure we get that fixed.
Fantastic. So coming back to your leadership, I'm really interested in how we lead in the space now with, because you're of a particular generation, right? So we don't have to share ages and anything like that. We've obviously been around the block a few times, and we've got younger generations coming in, Generation Z. Okay, what's it like leading them, and what impact are they having on tech as well?
Well, it's going to be a significant shift. We're not even in that shift yet, in my opinion. It's starting to happen. I'm pleased to be able to work for a company. One of their core values is transparency.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's going to become the critical cultural component going forward for any corporation. Let me give you an example. My son is in college right now and he's going into the industry. And in general, he doesn't trust what he sees. He feels like a lot of things are hidden from view. There is no transparency. Why are things being done the way they are? What's being done? And what's the reasoning behind how it's being done? What is it for my information that's impacted? What is it for my life that it's going to mean when I use your product? He basically says, I don't really trust it. Now, he's not a guy who's on social media either. This is just a generational approach and a mistrust of the systems. So if we don't tackle that for the next generations that are coming up into the workplace, we're going to have a problem in the marketplace. So leadership, if you're out there and you're thinking about how to position things, the black box approach, that's passé. That is done. We're done with that phase. It is time to be transparent for, not just the next generation, but for yourselves. How did you do this? Why did you do things the way you did? Let's share the wealth and up level together. That is a really important thing going forward.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in transparency. It allows the system to reflect in on itself and adjust. It also allows, agents within the system which have got an agenda to, it kind of uncovers them. I guess the problem, how we've got to this, without mentioning names of particular companies, is that we handed them trust and they abused it. And so there are kind of examples out there that have caused us to get a little bit reactive to, what are you doing with this data and so on. But then again, we live in a world where we're going to be using these platforms and sharing stuff and what have you.
Yeah. And from a leadership perspective, I think it's interesting in those cases to see what the response is in those times where that trust is breached.
Yes.
Is there a vulnerability as a leader to step up and say, you know what, we did this wrong. Here's how we're going to do it better in the future. And here are the things that we're going to now be making sure are clear to you. I think that piece, that vulnerability piece, means more than people think. And the idea of protectionism or hiding things no longer works, right? The information's out there. This is the information age, and AI is spreading it faster than ever. So let's just own it and get to transparency so that we can move past this moment.
Yes. And again, I'm kind of biting my tongue a little bit because I don't want to share the names of, but, an interesting one is that, there were some actions and things done and, though it wasn't proved definitively, it was kind of in the space. Instead, they kind of put lipstick on a pig and just said, no, everything's good. And I have to confess, personally speaking, I'm just like, I don't trust you as far as I could throw you, kind of thing, because you didn't actually come clean. And I think it's vulnerability. So just somebody say, do you know what? We messed up and we made a mistake and this is what we're going to do going forward. Absolutely. And we find that a lot missing in leadership. Some leadership where people don't own up and use it as an opportunity to grow together and create that trust.
I think one of the big things that we're seeing now, and this is the new threat, right, is if you don't own it, people will move off your platform to something else. A new platform or a new product is out there already, a competitive product, right? And with the next generation and AI generated things, somebody can, within 2 weeks, design a new solution competitive to yours, bring it online, and suddenly people can move right off and go to that. Now, okay, in the biggest enterprise, maybe there's a lot of data involved, right? But think of it from a personalized solution as companies shrink in size based on, what AI is doing, right? Some of the more successful companies don't have more than 100 employees at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. They have a lot more flexibility. You can't lose trust. Same thing at a personal level. If I feel betrayed by one solution, I can pull that off my phone and be on another one this afternoon. Yeah. And so that's the world we're in now. The game has changed and we don't really have the opportunity to ignore that anymore.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it's interesting how the vigorousness of the market is creating this. And again, your point to the AI doing this, it is changing we thought things were moving fast. They're going to move even faster. Oh my God. Slow down. We need to slow down.
Well, so can I tell you that's one of my top concerns going forward? So in the era of AI, we're already claiming 30-50% efficiencies in software development, right? Some people are saying, well, that's not the claims that you were originally promising. I'll tell you what, if somebody told me they could get me 30 to 50% return on my money today, I would take it, right? It's a good step forward. But where we're going is, as AI does more of the core work there, and we're adding those creative and innovative pieces, think about what that does. Those moments where you're highly creative and innovative and you're really deeply engaged in something, like you come out the other side of it and you're really satisfied with your work. It was great, but there's a little smoke coming off, isn't there? The whole idea that, wow, that took a lot of energy. Like, I'm going to have to refuel. We're talking about shifting developers and other employees into that work stream pretty full time. So the other thing I'm thinking about as a leader is sustainability. How do we sustain the workforce? How do we create that workforce that can now take the time they need as a rest interval throughout the day, right? You always say, I'll take 5 minutes away every hour. I don't know about you. I'm stuck in my chair too often, but if I could get that in the past, I was pretty happy with it. I don't think it's going to be as optional moving forward. If the intensity of the work is going to continue to increase, we're going to have to give our brains a rest so that we don't burn them out. So there's a sustainability piece on the heels of this as productivity increases, that we're going to have to redesign our workflows around AI anyway. Let's do so with the human in the middle, thinking about the limitations of us as humans.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Exactly. I think you're right. Businesses they morph into this, into trying to deliver only one thing. And I think, businesses are, there's a number of different things that they're responsible for. And I think that we definitely need to do that. And I've seen it with situations where, the system is driving you into burnout. It's inevitable. And actually, at the end of the day, when people burn out, they actually, whatever gains you've made with the intensity, you kind of lose them on the kind of like, I'm completely switching off now, so we do need to find that. But this is the problem, is that businesses are orientated to go faster and faster. Do you see an enlightenment in business where they're actually starting to see a different way of thinking and having that sustainability in the space?
That's a really tough question to ask, because I've given this quite a bit of thought, actually. What would it look like if you had a post-AI economy? Let's say AI delivered on all its promises. What would it look like for us to take full advantage of that? We're kind of greedy people. Let's be honest, right? So when you look at it through that lens, you say, I don't really have a lot of hope that it would get much better. In fact, I think more would be asked of me. I actually recently read a report that showed that, I think in my lifetime, I believe it was right about the time that I was born into this world that started, there's about a 500% uptick in productivity per employee. So if you think about that, there's this expedited productivity thing that we've been working on. And so if I was, say, 50 years ago building something, I can do 5 times more stuff today. That's pretty impressive, right? That's a great productivity output. That doesn't really account for any increases in proportionally anyway with pay and with whatever else, but it's that much more output. If AI is going to do that again, and I've heard a lot of 10x, 20x, 30x type multiplier expectations over time, that really vaults us forward in a way that we've never seen with automation, right? That moves things, and especially if it goes into humanoids, now we've got a really big move forward, right? So as that continues to happen, what do we do with it? Where do we go? Can we start to carve out a different work-life balance based on those gains, or are we just going to look for more? It's a very, very difficult question to answer, and it's going to depend on human nature. And it's going to depend on, worker requirements over time. Let's be honest. Workers push back on working conditions. It's when things change. Is this going to be one of those moments in history where that comes back to light? I don't know.
Yeah. Coming back to your Gen Z I think that generation are going to probably demand this. I know I probably would be, hey, I might start calling myself Gen Z, start to behave like a young whippersnapper, But I think you're right, because it's not going to be sustainable and it's something that's going to give. I have a question around, AI just in general, and are we going to, are the promises of AI, because you hear some really fantastic stories out there, and you've kind of shared some great use cases there, which kind of demonstrate the power of this shift that's we're going through. So I'm going to just throw one like an extreme case into the mix here. So, do you think that programmers are going to be eliminated from the process? Is AI going to write the code for us?
I think AI is going to write a lot of the code for us, but it's not going to replace. I see it as an augment, right? Unless AI increases dramatically in its capabilities from where we are, there's no way for it to do that level of replacement. Now, can it cap some of the hiring? Well, clearly that's what leadership is expecting, because all you have to do is look at the headlines, right? You look at what, say, an AWS or a Salesforce have said. Like you can go out and just look at some of the statements from their leadership and see that they've said, you know what, we're gonna try to use AI to make up the gap and not hire additional headcount this year. It doesn't say we're necessarily eliminating headcount. And we are seeing a lot of that right now across the news, elimination of headcount. But very little of it so far is related to anything AI based, because I don't know about you. I've read what humans write. I've read what AI writes. I'll take the human one all day long, right? It's just not there yet. The coding's the same way. It does great work, but without us going in and fixing the errors or showing it where we would do things differently and better, it's learning from, again, my old open source code from 10 years ago, which was not efficient. I wrote it in a hurry to help a customer solve a problem, and now there it sits. So that's not necessarily the right answer. So until we can remedy that, there's no way for us to say it's a replacement. And so for me, long term, this is an augment, not replace strategy.
Yeah. My mind went off to what else could it augment? So I went back to my days of being a project manager, a scrum master, an agile coach. So I'm wondering if we'd be able to create virtual agents that behave like project managers with us, or do the kind of bulk of the work. I often remember the time where we used to work on Gantt charts, and whenever there was a change, and there always was, suddenly we spend the entire day, adjusting the Gantt chart again, and maybe before the next change would happen. I'm just curious around what that looks like, because there is work there which could be assisted.
Well, and let me give you something around that may not be what you expect. I'm going to go out on a limb here a little bit further and hope it doesn't break on me. But one of my predictions for software development is that whole agile approach to things is about to become less relevant again. Where we went made sense at the time. I love agile. I worked for agile companies. I was part of transformations for years at Fortune 10 companies. This is what I did, and I loved it, and it made sense. Let's move into AI native and agent-based development. What happens is the AI coding can now lead our process. What happens now is the coding assistant can lead the process. The agent becomes the leader of the coding effort. Well, when it does that, it changes how we view coding. So if you think about the whole idea and the promise of Agile, it was at the end of this iteration, you'll have something you can validate that product manager input. Well, now the product manager can actually prompt the AI to go create something and look at it as soon as the AI is done. I don't need 2 weeks. I don't need a month. I might only need 30 minutes. Maybe I need 10 minutes. Or how long does the agent need to create that framework so that the product manager says, yes, that's the right thing? That initial stage of prototyping can be shrunk dramatically going forward. And we're shifting to the point now where what has always been developer assisted can be AI led. So the AI will actually be the author of the initial code. Well, if you start doing these things and moving this direction, think about the fact that, okay, I as a human commit a bunch of code, AI develops the tests, it runs the tests, it does some security scanning for me, and it says, okay, here's the changes you want to make to your code. It did all that in a somewhat independent way, what does it look like in code creation to follow an agile process in an AI native environment? Personally, I think it goes back a little bit. I think we as humans become, dare I say the word stage gate? We become those kind of gatekeepers again on the code. And AI native almost feels like a waterfall light type of approach without the delay. And so for me personally, I think the shift is coming where we're going to see the whole methodology change dramatically with AI native, and we're not going to see it as agile anymore. We're going to have an agile approach to our work, but I don't think that the agile methodology looks the same in AI native world.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. It's got me thinking as well. I'm going to chew on that after this podcast, because I think it's an important topic. This change is changing everything. It's change squared. So we'll see where that goes. So on your I want to come back to your journey. Any things, any resources, books, talks, maybe even movies that have been instrumental in your journey that you'd like to share here?
I am, let's just call me an avid reader. I'm about an hour a day just kind of devouring what I find in the active industry news on a daily basis. Lately, that's been about 2 hours with the changes of AI. I consider that part of what makes me effective in my role, right? I can't really keep up unless I'm keeping up, and the pace is quickened. Now, that said, there were a couple key things along the way that got me to where I am today. And I think you'll find this kind of interesting. So I find let's just go to the movie perspective because it's kind of a fun one. I find that anything inspirational fuels me to reach for something more. And what that might look like is anything in the sci-fi movie genre. Like, we'll just go there, because if you see something, a lot of times 2 years later, that's some kind of reality that's been implemented, right? And so it's like, wow, that's kind of neat. And then 2 years later, well, it's on your phone, right? It's a new capability. So that is something that kind of fuels me up to keep looking forward. But anything inspirational as well. For some reason, I go back to this old movie, the Rookie. It's a Disney movie, Dennis Quaid in it. Like it's just one of those movies that I watch it and it's like the art of the possible, right? Hey, it's this guy that's almost 40 years old and he goes back and starts pitching again, and he gets into the major leagues baseball for 2 years and has this great career that was never supposed to happen. And whew, man, what's the art of the possible for me, right? It fuels you up. It fires you up. The latest version of that, Top Gun Maverick, that's the other one. It just fuels me. It fires me up. It's such a cool thing. And hey, check it out. This guy's supposed to be retiring and he's going back down and he's showing everybody what's going on and how to do it. And it just, those kind of movies fuel me up for my career. It's fascinating to see that.
Yeah. I think, yes, I think the importance of stories is understated. I often, when I work with leaders, mentoring, coaching, and doing workshops, is that I refer to us as story making monkeys. Okay, the difference between these monkeys and those monkeys over there is these ones like to make stories, so they inspire us. They also kind of, don't help sometimes as well, but I think we do need that. So it's interesting that your reading is allowing you to kind of open your mind and see possibilities. I listen to a lot of documentaries from different industries, just totally different areas. I was watching one on bridge building the other day. I'm never going to build a bridge, right? I'm never going to, well, I may do now. But it kind of inspired me. There was these kind of little things, little facts and little approaches in thinking, how does that relate? TED Talks were great on that as well.
Yes.
Because they just got you thinking differently.
Lots of TED Talks on YouTube. That's always in my feed. A number of podcasts over the years, and it always changes up. And of course, those come and go sometimes in the business world. Somebody will get an idea for a year and you'll listen to it, and then you move on to the next one. So those have been good too. I've also always been the guy who reads business books. My wife's the one that reads the stories and kind of the more fictional stuff. I'm always in a non-fictional, help me do something better kind of flow. So, if I look at the number of books behind me, they're not on camera, but they're down here and they're in the next room. There's a pile of them. And I've given a lot of them away, right? I loved some of this stuff. But the idea of, like the boundaries books, what's a healthy relationship looks like? I love those books. Give and Take by Adam Grant, one of those things that helped me really frame what it looks like to work with other people and help them get what they want while I'm getting what I want. It's a win-win situation.
Yes.
I've got a book here on storytelling. It just in how to do it well in my role.
Yeah.
There's this whole idea of you becoming a specialist and a subject matter expert, but there's a book called Becoming a King by Morgan Snyder. It talks about how to be a generalist in your life. There's like just this one chapter that really encourages me to keep just knowing what I'm doing.
Yes.
And then, of course, you read that many books, you kind of get inspired. So back in 2018, I actually wrote a book called Don't Stop, Just Quit. It's out on Amazon. It's kind of starting to age a little bit. The world's changed a lot since 2018. So I'm thinking about a follow-up or a rewrite here. But that is, one of those things where when you learn so much, you want to share it. And that actually started as me writing something down just to share with my kids.
Yeah.
Enough people said, can you get this in a format where I can read it? So I did.
Yeah, fantastic. Well done on that. It's really good that you've done that. I always joke that, there's a book in me trying to come out and never quite makes it past a certain point, but I'll get there one day. I think that it is important, and books are, as a side note, when you pick up a book, I've got some behind me, somebody's put their heart, soul, and wisdom into that. It's a gift. And to receive it as such, and to really explore it, because there is kind of magic in there. So thank you for sharing those. I've added some to my list of books now, and to my Himalayan book mountain of books I want to read. Thanks for that, Joel. In fact, there's a name for people that buy books but never get to read them. There's an actual name for it. I'll have to remember what it is, but it's a thing, it's a thing. Here we go. I'm going to offer you a wish. I'm going to be the tech genie. Okay. I'm going to be all powerful and offer a wish. What would you wish for? What would you wish for?
I am going to take you back to the concept of sustainability. I know far too many people burning out in their careers, and it's painful. So what it's doing is it's dropping our tenure to new lows, right? We're seeing people hop out, drop out, change at a regular interval. And I think if we can get our productivity up and sustain the humanity around it, we'll be in good shape. But I've just seen too much of that, and some of that is generational, right? We're seeing that newer folks coming into the workforce don't want to work quite the same way, right? I mean, I grew up, you just did a 50-hour work week. You worked, you got it done, and that was just what you did. Well, we have opened a lot of doors, haven't we, with remote work and digital nomads and the idea of all this new technology and what AI is capable of. But we're still kind of converging back on old business models. So what does it look like to be sustainable today? I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's going to be really important for any enterprise going forward as it relates to retaining the talent on your teams long term. There is a benefit to that.
People that are very self-aware and are able to, rather than being in the quagmire of their situation, they're able to sit back and actually observe it. I think there's a lot of people out there like yourself, and there is a passion there. A lot of people don't know what to do with that. Maybe they're stuck with their life situation, for financial reasons or for whatever, cultural. But I think it is important because, this stuff doesn't just have an impact. It has an impact on the individual, which is horrible. It has an impact on society. It has an impact on families. It has an impact, maybe even kind of on a kind of national level. If people are burnt out and fed up, and it all feeds into this kind of energy, which might not always be positive. It's and then it has an impact on a bigger scale, which starts affecting everybody. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, and I'm hoping AI drives us into more of our passion work, which helps us with job satisfaction. But again, if we're not thinking about the sustainability of that, will it actually exacerbate the problem rather than remedy it?
Yeah.
Unknown yet.
As a genie, I'm going to work on that because I think it's really important. So thank you for sharing that, Joel.
I appreciate that. That's great.
Hey, right. So as we come to the final full stop of the podcast together, what's the key takeaway that you'd like to leave as a parting gift to the audience listening to this?
I think we have to be new leaders. It is a time for change. I talked about transparency today. I talked about watching out for sustainability, the changes in technology, the changes in workflows. All of that comes down to people. Every time it comes down to people. And so what are we doing to help people see what all of that looks like in their daily lives today, 6 months from now, a year from now, right? How is it going to impact your life? Well, just go use AI. It's going to help you in your job. Okay. Right. What does that mean? So those kind of things are what we're seeing leadership do. I would love to see not a prescriptiveness, but an art of the possible, a casting of this is that moment where things are going to change. Let me help prepare you for it. And please provide the inputs on how you work today that show me how we can work better tomorrow. Lead the people, but let the people lead back. Let them show you the way. A lot of groups are going to get this wrong. They're going to be left behind. A lot of people are not going to understand the transition and just plain be left behind if we don't invest in them. So we have to be the leaders. We have to lead by example, or we need to get out of the way, right? Change isn't anticipated, it's expected now, which means we have to play an active role in managing the change on behalf of the people we represent. So I think that's my core message for anybody that's wants a summary of all the things we've been talking about. Let's be those leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of comes back onto, telling stories around this. What does this mean? What does this change mean in our story? What's the story that we want to be telling further ahead? So thank you for that, Joel. It's been wonderful speaking to you. I look forward to speaking to you again. I think you're, got some fascinating kind of, ideas around technology. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.